Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey, and there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 377. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about how to prioritize your hobbies and outdoor adventures, or any kind of adventures. And this was inspired by a search term that someone used to arrive at my website. I always pay attention to the search terms that people use, because if they're relevant to what I'm writing about now or talking about now, I often use it as an inspiration for a new blog post or podcast episode. Now, in the past, I've talked about how to prioritize the things that are important to us. Life is busy. We often don't have time to do all the things that we want to do. But it's important to learn how to prioritize our time. Otherwise, we end up getting swept away by the stream of life, just letting life happen to us rather than creating the life that we want to live. And that's something that I think I'll probably end up talking about a lot in the next few weeks because I've been working on getting my Create Your Ideal Life planner together because October is usually the time of year that I do my own life planning and annual planning for the year to come because Samhain is coming up at the end of the month and that's kind of my end of the year, start of the new year time for me. So this is something that I'm starting to think about. What am I going to do next year? How do I want to create the year that I want to live rather than letting life happen to me, which is how I lived the first probably 35 years of my life, and it's only in the last 10 or 12 years that I've actually really focused on what I wanted to experience in life and what kinds of experiences I wanted to have so that I could make sure that I had those experiences, if that makes sense. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to prioritize the things that make you happy, your hobbies, your adventures, the things that you want to do in life. So, when you're looking at prioritizing your time, your hobbies, your activities, your responsibilities, you need to know how much time you have available. So I've talked about time blocking in the past, and I actually have an episode that was just about general life priorities. It was episode 304, where I talked about how to prioritize when you can't do it all. So I talked a lot about time blocking and how I manage my own schedule, and that's basically with Google Calendar, where I time block everything. My meals, my exercise, whether that's running or kickboxing or whatever it is that I'm doing, walking, I prioritize or I block out time for responding to emails, for writing blog posts, for doing all the other little tasks and things that I do, client work. So I have all of that time blocked and color-coded because I really like colors in my calendar. And the reason why I do that is because it helps me to see when I have free time. So when do I have time to get out of the office and research a blog post? When do I have time to go away on a workcation weekend? When do I have time to meet up with a friend? Obviously that's happening less this year, but it still does occur every once in a while. So by time blocking, I can see what free time I have in my days and my weeks and my months and my year to add these extra things. These things that aren't necessarily set in stone, these things that are more flexible. They might not necessarily happen the same time every day or the same time every month. But I need to know when I have free time so that I can fit these things in. So time blocking to me is the basis of how I prioritize the things that I want to do because I first need to know what is non-negotiable and what time I have free. Again, if you want to check out that episode, I will link to that in the show notes. Talk all about my time blocking process, and I don't want to go into that again since I've talked about that not too long ago. But look into time blocking, look into how you schedule your days and weeks, because that's kind of the first foundation. It's the first basis of knowing how much time you have free. Next, I would say design your ideal week and compare it to your actual week. So what I did at one point and I've done this a couple of times, in my Google Calendars, I've taken a week, few months in the future, and I've looked at all the stuff that I had in there, and I kind of dragged and dropped things and made up kind of a fake week of how I would ideally like my week to look, how I would like my time blocking to look with my ideal week. And then I kind of compare that to my reality, my current actual life. And I think about what things I could change to make that ideal week a reality. And maybe that's not something I can change from one day to the next, but it's something that I can start making smaller shifts, smaller changes, so that I can fit these ideal tasks and ideal activities into my life so that I can create my ideal week. So that's another really useful exercise as well. So not that long ago, I added, and I actually haven't done this yet, but I added one day a week to go and research a blog post. So I have this whole list of blog posts that I want to be writing, and some of them involve travel. Partly because I need to research them and partly because I need photographs. So I want to take some new photographs of all the Avebury trees because I have this blog post that I've been writing about how to find the Avebury trees that are in the If Trees Could Talk book, because people have mentioned to me that they've gone to Avebury to try to find the trees, and I just want to make it easier for people. But I also want to take better photographs of the trees because I really have terrible photographs of them. So I've written the blog post, it's sitting there in drafts, but I need photographs. So I need to go out to Avebury, and that's a day trip to go there and get those pictures taken. I have other blog posts I want to write where I'm researching trails and things that I want to share with people, and I really have to go out and walk the walks and take the pictures, and so I can actually write the post. So that's one thing that I've really been wanting to do. That's a huge part of my ideal week. So I've put that in the calendar. Sadly, I've had to cancel the last couple of those because either the weather was terrible and I knew the pictures would be terrible, but I'm flexible with that because this is a new addition to my calendar. I'm dragging and dropping and adjusting as needed because obviously it doesn't make sense to go out in the pouring rain if there's a storm out. It's not going to make for very appealing photographs. I don't mind a little bit of rain, but I think the weather that we had last week when I was going to go on this trip to take some pictures, it was just not suitable. So look at the things that you want to add and look at how you can fit them into your ideal week. That's another thing that's really important. And just see how feasible it is. So, like I've said, I've had to cancel because of weather. A couple of weeks I had to cancel because I just didn't have enough time. But it's in my calendar and it's my goal to start making that happen. Now that we're moving into autumn and winter, perhaps that might not happen every single week, but it's something that I'm looking to start making a part of my normal week. So that's another thing you can do. Finally, plan your year. Now, I'm going to be releasing my yearly planner probably at the end of this month or the start of next month to help you plan your year. But in the meantime, you can start out by using your own system or just use your journal. Make a list of all of the things that you want to do next year, all the things you want to experience next year. What are your plans, your projects, your goals? What hobbies do you want to partake in next year? How often do you want to do these things? Where do you want to do these things? So for me, for example, walking is a big thing for me. Walking is very important. So I've signed up for a couple of ultra walks next year. Running is once again very important to me. I've got a race coming up in 2 weeks, a 12K, and then I want to add, I haven't set this in stone yet because I haven't planned my year yet, but I at least want to do a half marathon next year and quite possibly a marathon. But we'll see how my training fits into my calendar. So those are my running goals for next year. Kickboxing, if life gets back to normal next year, hopefully would like to do my black belt grading by the end of next year. It would either be summer course or winter course. I doubt it will happen in the summer course. I doubt the summer course will even happen, but next year, that's one thing I would like to do if things get back to normal. And when I say back to normal, we've had classes, but it's been like no contact classes. So it's kind of hard to train for an advanced grading in martial arts if you can't punch and kick people. And I really need to get back into practice with my sparring, and that's not happened. So that's kind of one of those flexible goals. So, what do I need to do to make these goals happen? Like, how often do I need to go walking? How often do I need to go running? And I've worked those things into my calendar. Another thing is I would like to do at least 2 long distance trails next year. One in the spring, one in the fall. I'm really, really liking walking in September. September has been a fantastic year the last 2 years for walking long distance trails. And I'd like to do another one maybe in March or April. So those are my thoughts. I need to obviously fit those into the calendar and, hopefully train for them as well, because the walks I want to do involve camping. So I'm going to be carrying a bigger pack than usual. And that is something that I will have to train for. So these are just some examples of my plans, my projects, my goals in terms of adventure, outdoor activities, hobbies. So write down all the things you want to experience for next year. And then I think it's also important to write down, why are these things important to you? What do these things give you? Because really getting clear on that detail will help you to prioritize these activities, because you'll realize how important they are to you. So for me, walking isn't just important to me because I like walking. It's nice, but walking gives me a sense of freedom. It gives me a sense of expansive joy. It gives me a sense of adventure. It just gives me such happiness. And it gives me fitness because it's great exercise. Running gives me all those same things, but more, because running is, for me at least, harder than walking. Running just really kind of gets my heart going and releases those endorphins and just makes me feel great. And it makes me feel strong, and it makes me feel, speedy. And running helps me with my kickboxing. I've noticed that I'm performing better in kickboxing classes. And I think it's because of my running, because I'm getting that, great cardio exercise. Why is kickboxing important to me? Because normally when we have normal contact classes, it makes me feel strong. It makes me feel confident. It makes me feel capable of defending myself. It makes me feel energized. So what are these things? These adventures, these hobbies, what do they give you? How do they make you feel? Why are they important to you? Really spend some time journaling about that, writing stuff down, because the more you understand that, the easier it will be for you to prioritize them. And then when you're planning your year, some people like to be busy all the time. I'm not one of those people. But I'm also one of those people that has so many things that I want to do that it's really hard for me to fit everything into my calendar. So one of the things that I do as part of my yearly planning is I have a 1-page calendar for the year that just has, all the months and days. And I color code each weekend. So I block off time for example, next year I'm doing my ethnobotany course. That's I think a 9-month program. So every weekend of ethnobotany I've got highlighted in green on my calendar. I've got races that I've already signed up for, highlighted on the calendar. I've got the kickboxing gradings, even though they're probably not going to happen, highlighted on the calendar. I also highlight my estimated menstrual cycle because I found that it's really important to pay attention to my cycle, because first half of my cycle is really good for training, really good for energy, really good for fasting. Second half of my cycle, harder to fast. Training isn't as good. And these are scientifically proven things because, of course, your body after ovulation is getting ready for pregnancy, and it's kind of helping you to stay at home and stay calm and take care of yourself and get ready for that baby. And then when you bleed again, no baby. So your body's back into let's perform mode. That wasn't a very scientific explanation for that, but I can link to some things in the show notes that explain this better. But you get the idea. First half of the cycle, great for energetic things. Second half of the cycle, not so much. And so I just like to be aware of that. I won't necessarily not plan for things when I'm, got my period, except for long distance walks, because that is such a pain. I try to avoid that. But I like to be aware of when it is. Also, I find that my energy levels are really low the first day of my cycle. So if you know these things about you, assuming you're a woman. If you're not a woman, great. You don't have to worry about these things. If you are a woman and you're aware of your cycle, pay attention to how your energy levels are at each phase of your cycle, because that's also going to help you to prioritize the things you want to do and to plan the best dates for them. So I plan my year. I've got this 1-page calendar where I highlight everything in different colors. Period is pink. Fitness is usually blue. Outdoor stuff is green. Workations are purple. That's another thing. I do my workation weekends usually once a month, sometimes twice a month. When we were coming out of lockdown this year, for a couple months, I did 2 workations a month, and it was fantastic, but I felt like I had to kind of catch up on all the lost time during lockdown when I just wasn't being very creative or productive. So workations go in there, and I end up not having very many free weekends. And I don't like that. I like to have the occasional, at least once a month, a weekend where I can just do nothing and have no plans and not have anything to do. So planning for downtime and lazy time is just as important as prioritizing your hobbies. In some cases. Again, some people love being busy all the time. I really need, at least one weekend a month where I don't do anything. Or I don't have anything planned. Obviously, I end up doing things, but they're kind of lazy things rather than activity things. So look at your year. Block out all the things that you've got planned. See how much time you have free. And then see how you can add training, activities, all that stuff into the white spaces, into the missing or the free days that you've got on your calendar. And so once I've mapped that out, then everything goes back into the Google Calendar and I make sure that I've planned everything. So for the ultra walks that I've got next year, I've got a 50K and a 100K walk planned, and I've got some training walks in the calendar to make sure that I get the training in that I need well in advance of the actual events. That's how I make it happen. If I didn't put this stuff in the calendar, it wouldn't happen. And then race day would become here and I'd be like, how do I walk 50K? I don't know. I've never done that before. So I need to get it in the calendar to make sure that it happens. Otherwise, it's just this kind of plan in my mind that may or may not happen, but probably won't because it's not in the calendar, because the calendar rules my life. So part of making your priorities happen, part of making your hobbies and your outdoor adventures a priority, is planning. If you just let life happen to you, it's just going to happen. And other stuff and other people's priorities are going to take over, and you probably won't end up doing the things that you really, really want to do, the things that bring you joy, the things that bring you happiness, your hobbies, your adventures. So that's why it's so important to understand why they're so important to you so that you can plan your year and make these things a priority. Again, you need to start out with the things that are non-negotiable, like work stuff, client stuff, business stuff, child stuff if you have kids, family stuff. The stuff that you absolutely have to do, that needs to go into your calendar first, because otherwise you'll think you have all this free time. But you don't. And meals need to go in there as well, because meal times take up a lot of time. I practice intermittent fasting, so I don't have as many meals as most people do, but still, meal times take time. You need to cook the food, you need to prepare the food, you need to eat the food. And I ideally just sit and listen to a podcast while I'm eating. I don't work, I don't sit on my computer. I try to stay away from multitasking, except for, probably listening to a podcast when I'm eating. So make sure that you have those times for those non-negotiable things blocked out in your calendar. Now that's the practical side of how to make your hobbies a priority, but what if stuff gets in the way? What kinds of things could get in the way, aside from just basic life activities? A lot of times we don't feel like we deserve to make our interests and our hobbies and our adventures a priority. And that's a mindset thing that I think is really worth exploring and looking at. Do you deserve to make your hobbies a priority? A lot of people feel like they have to put other people's interests first, and sometimes you do. If you've got kids, you've got to feed the kid and take care of the kid. So I'm not talking about those things, but a lot of times people will prioritize doing favors for other people at their own detriment. So it's really important to think, do you believe that you deserve to spend your free time the way you want to? Or do you believe you should always be helping other people and doing what other people want you to do? And that's a really slippery slope, because if you get into the habit of letting other people dictate your free time and how you use it, you probably won't ever have enough free time to do the things that you want to do. But a lot of times that can come down to a self-worth issue, an issue of feeling like you deserve to have fun, you deserve to have adventures, you deserve to have hobbies, you deserve to have time to do the things you want to do. So are you worthy? Do you believe that you're worthy of spending your time in the way you want to? And that brings me to boundaries. So in order to create this life that we want to live and prioritize our hobbies and our adventures, we need to set boundaries. So if you've got something in the calendar that's yours, that's your thing that you want to do, whether it's going for a walk or a run or whatever, and someone says, oh, do you want to do something on this day, or can you help me with this? You need to be confident enough and grounded enough and feel like you are worthy enough to set that boundary and say, oh, I'd really love to, but I can't. I've got something else going on. And set that boundary so that you can have some time for yourself and do the things you want to do. And again, the amount of time that you have at your disposal is going to depend on every single individual, but you at least need to have some time each week, at least once a week, where you can do the things you want to do. And maybe you don't have time to do a 15-mile hike, but maybe you can go for a walk around the block. So you need to see how you can adjust your hobbies to fit into the free time that you have in your life. But you also need to be sure that you set the boundaries so that your time isn't constantly getting sucked up by other people. It's also worth looking at other aspects of your mindset when it comes to prioritizing your hobbies and your adventures. So what are the fears, the blocks, the limiting beliefs you have around prioritizing your hobbies and your adventures and the things that are important to you? So what are your fears? It could be something like, what will people think of me? What will my partner think of me? What will my kids think of me? What will my family think of me? What will my friends think of me if I prioritize me time? A lot of times women are expected to be selfless and to do everything for other people and to put their needs last. And if you've adopted that kind of thinking, the kind of expectations of yourself, then you might have a lot of fears around making your own interests and your own hobbies a priority. What kinds of things are blocking you from making your hobbies a priority? What beliefs do you have around that? Do you think maybe you'll become too selfish? Do you think that maybe other people will think you're selfish? Are you afraid that you'll get stressed out and that you'll burn out because you're doing too many things? Are you afraid that you don't have enough time in your schedule to practice your hobbies and your adventures? What limiting beliefs do you have? Do you believe that people or women who put their hobbies first or make their hobbies a priority are selfish? What beliefs do you have that might be stopping you from making your hobbies and your adventures a priority? I think if you've got the practical plan in place and it's still not happening, if you're still not doing your hobbies and making them a priority, I think it's worth looking at your mindset and the fears and blocks and limiting beliefs that you might have that are keeping you from actually doing your hobbies and actually having the adventures that you want to have. There have been many times that I've gone out for a walk or gone out for a run or engaged in my hobbies and felt guilty about it. It's like I've done the things that I wanted to do, but I haven't done them wholeheartedly. And I've had like that guilt playing in the background at the same time. And that's not good either. So it's really important to be able to understand why these hobbies and these adventures are so important to you and why they are just a rich part of your life, so that you can give yourself permission to do these things free from guilt. and this is really, really important, give yourself permission to do these hobbies, to engage in these hobbies, to have these adventures, because they're important for you and because you are worthy of having a rich, adventurous, satisfying life. And forget what other people have to say. Forget how other people might judge you for it. And if you have people who are judging you for pursuing your hobbies and pursuing your adventures, then maybe those people shouldn't be in your life. If you find that your friends are being critical of you, it might be time to think about upgrading your friend group, because these people might not truly be your friends. So, those are my thoughts on how to prioritize your hobbies and your outdoor adventures and your goals. And again, I'll probably be talking about this more as we approach the end of October, which is the time when I start planning my future year. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Spending most of my time these days on Instagram, but I'm also on Twitter, to a lesser extent Facebook. I have gotten more involved in Pinterest lately. That's not really a great platform for engagement, but there I am. So find me online and get in touch, or email me. I would love to hear from you. What are your top tips on how to prioritize your hobbies and adventures and things that are important to you? That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening, and remember to visit hollyworton.com/377 for the show notes on this episode. And again, let me know what your tips are. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.